Hello guys, welcome back to another update video on my multiplayer project. The footage you just watched was from the very first playtest of my game that happened just shortly after the previous update video. There were a lot of bugs found, and the networking solution was definitely put to the test, but I think it went really well. By the way, if you're new here, this is my multiplayer game I'm working on. A first-person, action shooter game with multiple game modes that can be played in a variety of team sizes. Now that you know what I'm making, let's get right into what I've worked on since the last update video. So like I said, a lot of bugs were found during the playtest, so the first thing I did was go through them and fix as many as I could. For example, there were major performance issues with how I was doing the sniper scope. This was because I was rendering the scene twice in order to render the scope's view on the scope lens. Unfortunately, at least for now, my solution was to just have the scope lens be a solid color when the sniper is being held, and then when you aim with the scope, I just render a mesh of just the scope right in front of your view. Now, since I no longer render a second pass of the scene, the performance is fine. Although this isn't as realistic looking, I think it still looks good. In the last update video, I was working on the Capture the Flag game mode. I asked you guys whether or not I should let the players be able to drop the flag. Most people seem to agree that you should be able to, so I went ahead and made the flag droppable. Now you're able to drop the flag when carrying it in order to pass it to a teammate, or if you need to switch to another weapon to defend yourself. I also had to keep all the edge cases in mind when implementing this. When you die with the flag will be dropped. Or if you disconnect with the flag will also be dropped. If a player from the flag's own team tries to pick it up, or if the flag is left on the ground for a certain period of time, it will be returned to its spawner. I think the Capture the Flag game mode is pretty much done now, but I'm sure I'll be continuing to tweak things as we playtest it more. Now, let's talk about the progress I made on the ship map. Right away, you can see that I've started to texture the exterior of the ship. I'm using a color palette method that maps UVs of the models to a certain color on the texture. I plan to continue using this method throughout my game because it's a more performant way of assigning colors to your models. I also finished modeling the tower of the ship and placed some more props around the upper deck. The next thing I have to do is finalize the interior of the lower decks and assign color textures to them as well. The last thing I added was these little fishies in the water around the ship. This little fish model was made by my girlfriend and is actually really good for her first model. I think they add that little extra life to the map. Let me know what you think below that like button. The next thing I worked on was an adaptive crosshair. You might have noticed already, but the crosshair size is now adaptive to your current action. So if you're just standing still, the crosshair will be precise and easier to aim with, but if you're walking or running, then the crosshair will increase in size, making it less precise to aim with. This makes sense because it should be easier to line up the shot if you aren't moving, and you shouldn't be able to be precise at long range if you are moving. Speaking of lining up the shot, there are now bullet holes and hit sounds. A bullet hole will now be left on anything that you shoot. Oh, and if you hit a player, particles will shoot out from where you hit them. Also, whenever a bullet hits something, a hit sound will now play. This will hopefully make it easier to recognize when you're being shot at from far away. Even though you can't hear the actual gunshots, you can still hear the bullets hitting the ground around you. Now the last thing that I want to talk about is a bunch of reworks that I did. When I say reworks, I mean changing a system or feature that I already implemented to be better. I reworked the spawn point system to account for spawning players at different spawn points depending on the game mode. For example, in the Valley map, if the game mode is a team game mode, then each player should spawn with their own teammates on their side of the map. And if the game mode is a free-for-all game, then each player should spawn at random spawn points all over the map. So yeah, my spawning system is now able to do this. I also reworked the gun recoil system to have different recoil amounts depending on your action. So similar to the adaptive crosshair, if you're running, you should have lots of recoil. If you're standing still, you should have less. And if you're aiming down sights, you should have the least amount of recoil. So yeah, this should hopefully give players more of an incentive to aim down sights in order to line up their shots. So, I think that's about it for this update video. If you want to be a part of our next playtest, make sure to join the Discord server, head on over to the roles channel, and assign yourself that playtester role. Also, make sure to click on the playlist in the end card to watch all the previous and future update videos on my game. I hope you liked this update video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Until then, thanks for watching, Zippy out.